9 forgotten Hemi-powered American sports cars nobody talks about. In 1964, Chrysler built a car with aluminum doors, aluminum fenders, and aluminum hood, no rear seat, plexiglass windows instead of glass, and a 426 cubic inch engine that engineers were not allowed to say made more than 425 horsepower. It was a family sedan. They sold 55 of them to the public so it could legally race. Nobody outside of drag racing knows it ever existed. The 426 Hemi is one of the most famous engines in American automotive history, but the cars it was secretly shoved into are a completely different story. These are 9 of them. Number 9. The 1964 Plymouth Savoy Super Stock. The Plymouth Savoy was the cheapest, most basic, most unglamorous car Plymouth sold in 1964. No luxury trim, no performance pretensions. A stripped base model in the Plymouth lineup designed for buyers who needed basic transportation and nothing more. Chrysler looked at that combination of cheap body and zero weight and decided it was perfect for a racing program. To qualify for NHRA Superstock Class B competition, Chrysler needed to build a minimum of 100 street legal production examples of any race car before it could enter competition legally. In 1964, Plymouth Savoy Superstock was the result. Chrysler built 55 examples, each equipped with a 426 cubic inch race Hemi V8 in its most aggressive race specification, featuring a cast iron K-head, a short ram aluminum intake manifold tuned to produce peak power above 4,000 RPM, and dual 4-barrel carburetors. The car was also fitted with aluminum front fenders, aluminum doors, and aluminum hood, lightweight plexiglass side windows, and no rear seat, with the rear interior deleted to reduce weight to the minimum possible within the rules. The race Hemi was officially rated at 425 horsepower, a figure almost universally agreed to be a significant understatement of its actual output. In the context of a car weighing significantly less than the standard Savoy, the result was a production vehicle that ran the quarter mile in the low 11-second range in the hands of experienced drag racers. Number 8. The 1964 Dodge 330 Super Stock. Simultaneously with the Plymouth Savoy program, Chrysler built an identical operation using the Dodge 330, the lightest available B-body in the Dodge lineup. 55 Dodge 330 Super Stock cars were built under the A864 option code, each assembled with the same race Hemi, the same aluminum body panels, the same deleted rear seat, the same plexiglass windows, and the same purpose. The Dodge 330 was otherwise a budget-oriented full-size sedan, a fleet vehicle for government agencies and businesses that needed basic transportation at minimum cost, not a performance car in any conventional sense. The 1964 race Hemi K-head was a one-year item. By 1965, Chrysler had replaced the cast iron K-heads with aluminum counterparts and switched the short ram intake manifold from aluminum to magnesium, making the 1964 race Hemi components unusually rare even among Hemi collectors. One of the 55 Dodge 330 Super Stock cars sold at Rare Car Network for documentation as a one of 19 red over red A864 example, factory delivered to Mr. Norm's Grand Spalding Dodge in Chicago, one of the most famous Mopar performance dealerships in the country. It had been stored from 1968 to 2005 with the original drivetrain intact. Number 7. The 1965 Plymouth A990 Super Stock. For 1965, Chrysler refined the Superstock program and produced what became the A990 models, a series of Plymouth badge Superstock drag cars built again for NHRA homologation around the 426 race Hemi in its revised aluminum head specification. The 1965 NHRA regulations no longer permitted the aluminum body panels used in 1964, so Chrysler adapted by chemical milling, a process of acid-dipping body components to reduce their wall thickness while retaining their original shape and material. The result was steel body panels significantly lighter than standard production items, while technically complying with the requirements that the car be built from the same materials as the standard production version. The 1965 A990s came without rear seats, without sound deadening, without carpeting, and without any interior trim beyond the minimum required to pass inspection. The cars were identified in production records by VINs consisting entirely of numbers with no letters, a coding system used specifically to distinguish these special race production cars from standard vehicles in Chrysler's internal documentation. Number 6. The 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi station wagon. Among the most obscure Hemi-powered vehicles ever documented is the 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi station wagon, a vehicle whose existence was so counterintuitive that it was not widely acknowledged in automotive literature for decades. The 426 Street Hemi had been introduced in 1966 as the first version of the engine designed and rated for road use, featuring a lower 10.25:1 compression ratio compared to the race engine's higher specification, with a single dual 4-barrel intake designed for street drivability rather than peak race power output. The Street Hemi was officially offered in the Dodge Coronet, Dodge Charger, Plymouth Belvedere, and Plymouth Satellite. What Chrysler's order books also recorded, in extremely small numbers, were Coronet station wagons ordered with the Street Hemi option by buyers who appeared to have checked every available performance option, regardless of whether they made practical sense in a family hauler. The result was a full-size Dodge station wagon with a 426 cubic inch Hemi engine, a vehicle capable of delivering groceries and humiliating muscle cars from the adjacent lane simultaneously. Number 5. The Facel Vega HK500. In 1954, a French aerospace company called Facel launched a car at the Paris Salon that was powered by a 4.5-liter DeSoto Hemi V8 because no French manufacturer produced an engine large or powerful enough to meet the founder's specifications. Jean Daninos had worked alongside André Citroën in the 1930s, and during the war had run Facel, the company that manufactured tooling for the French aircraft industry. After the war, he decided to build the most luxurious French Grand Touring car available, and he concluded that the only engine appropriate for it came from Chrysler's catalog. The Facel Vega HK500, introduced in 1959, used a 383 cubic inch Chrysler Typhoon V8, producing 360 horsepower, which was large enough and powerful enough to give the HK500 a claimed top speed competitive with the Ferrari 250 GT, the Aston Martin DB4, and the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. The car was built entirely by hand at a facility in Colombes, outside Paris, weighed approximately 1,800 kilograms, and was finished in a luxury interior quality comparable to the finest British coach builders. Frank Sinatra owned one. Ringo Starr owned one. Albert Camus was killed in a road accident involving one when his publisher's HK500 left the road at high speed in January 1960. The HK500 was as fast as any European sports car of its era, more luxurious than most of them, and powered by an American Hemi engine that its French manufacturer had to import specifically because nobody in France could build anything comparable. Number 4. The 1968 Plymouth Barracuda Hemi Superstock. Chrysler was not officially permitted to install the 426 Hemi engine in the Plymouth Barracuda. The Barracuda was built on the compact A-body platform, which corporate engineering guidelines categorized as too light and too small to safely accommodate the 426 weight, power output, and torque. The official position was that the Hemi would simply be too much engine for the Barracuda's chassis to manage safely. Chrysler found a way around its own rules. In 1968, the company contracted Hurst Performance to receive stripped Barracuda bodies and install the 426 Race Hemi, along with a package of lightweight components, including fiberglass hood and front fenders, acid-dipped door skins, a 4-speed manual transmission without synchronizers, and a Dana heavy-duty rear axle with 4.88:1 gearing. 50 Hemi Barracudas were built this way, each technically assembled by Hurst rather than by Chrysler, which allowed the corporate prohibition on factory Hemi Barracuda production to remain technically intact while the cars went to drag strips across the country. The same program produced 80 Hemi Darts through an identical arrangement. Between them, two programs represent 130 of the smallest, lightest, most lethally overpowered cars that any American manufacturer produced during the entire muscle car era. Number 3. The 1968 Dodge Hemi Dart LO23. While Chrysler was arranging the Barracuda program through Hurst, the Dodge division was running the same workaround with the Dart. The Hemi Dart LO23 was built from 1968 Dart GTS hardtop bodies, stripped at the factory before being shipped to Hearst's facility in Ferndale, Michigan, where the 426 race Hemi was installed alongside the full lightweight conversion package. The cars arrived at Hearst without engines, transmissions, hoods, or front fenders. Hearst installed the cross-ram Hemi with dual 4-barrel Holley carburetors, an aluminum intake manifold, and a compression ratio of 10.25 to 1. 4-speed manual transmissions had their synchronizers removed to prevent missed shifts during racing use. Bucket seats from a Dodge A100 van were used rather than standard Dart seating to reduce weight. The Dodge Dart that went on sale in American showrooms was never offered with anything larger than a 383 cubic inch engine. The 80 LO23 Hemi Darts were built specifically so that Chrysler could compete in NHRA Class B Superstock, using a compact car that weighed significantly less than the Coronet or Charger that normally carried the 426, and whose lighter body gave the super spec engine a power-to-weight ratio that no standard Hemi car could match. Drag racing legends Dick Landy and Don Garlitz both competed in Hemi-powered darts during this period, but the factory version is the one that stands apart. 80 cars, officially built by a third-party performance company to circumvent Chrysler's own engineering restrictions, sold to the public as race-ready vehicles, and largely forgotten outside of Mopar's specialist circles. Number 2. The 1971 Plymouth GTX Hemi. By 1971, the 426 Street Hemi was entering its final model year, and Chrysler was not making the transition easy for the people who wanted it. The 1971 Plymouth GTX, with the 426 Hemi option, required the buyer to check a specific box on the order form for an engine that cost significantly more than the base price of several competitors' complete vehicles. Dealers frequently discouraged the order because the cars were difficult to sell new, difficult to insure, and attracted regulatory attention. Insurance companies in 1971 had begun using vehicle specifications to set premiums at rates that made Hemi cars essentially prohibitive for younger buyers. The production numbers for 1971 Hemi GTX vehicles are among the lowest for any factory Hemi application. The option code was available, but almost nobody ordered it, and the cars that were ordered and built are now among the rarest surviving examples of street Hemi production. The GTX itself was discontinued after 1971, eliminated by Plymouth as a separate model in the corporate rationalization that followed the muscle car era's collapse. The final year of the street Hemi, and the final year of the GTX, produced a small number of cars that barely anyone outside of specialist auction houses had any reason to know existed, until they started appearing at Mecum and Barrett-Jackson decades later with price tags in 6 figures. Number 1. The Chrysler 300 Hemi Letter Series. Before the 426 existed, before the muscle car era began, and before anyone outside of Chrysler's engineering department had heard the word Hemi in connection with a production performance car, there was the Chrysler 300 Letter Series. Chrysler introduced the 300C in 1957 as part of a series of performance-oriented luxury cars designated by consecutive letters of the alphabet, beginning with the 1955 C300 that used a firepower Hemi to produce 300 horsepower, the highest output of any American production car that year. The 300B of 1956 raised output to 340 horsepower. The 300C of 1957 produced 375 horsepower from a 392 cubic inch Hemi, with an optional 390 horsepower version available through special order. The 300D of 1958 continued with the 392 Hemi before Chrysler discontinued the first generation Hemi engine entirely, replacing it with the Wedgehead B and RB engines for cost reasons. The Chrysler 300 Letter Series between 1955 and 1958 was, by a significant margin, the fastest American production car available in any of those model years. It dominated NASCAR's Flying Miles speed trials at Daytona Beach. It won the NASCAR Grand National Championship in 1955 and 1956 with driver Tim Flock. It produced power figures that no other American manufacturer's production car could match. And it did all of this in a full-size luxury sedan with leather seats, power windows, and a price tag that placed it firmly in the category of expensive personal luxury cars, rather than raw performance machines. The Chrysler 300 Letter Series cars were the first American production cars to treat Hemi-Power as a luxury feature rather than a racing tool. And they did it nearly a decade before anyone coined the phrase muscle car. The 1957 Chrysler 300C, with its 392 Hemi and 390 horsepower optional output, is the original forgotten Hemi-powered American sports car. The one that made every other car on this list possible, and the one whose story almost nobody who can tell it is still around to share.